wave.
Do I have to wait?
Okay. Will you hold this like this? Or actually, put it right here. That way it stays still. Injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. These wide words from Martin Luther King Jr. echoed in our time today, just as they did for those in the civil rights movement. Today, I would like to discuss the effects that Martin Luther King and his time brought people together and benefited a wider movement. Martin Luther King had an unwavering commitment to justice and equality. On August 28, 1963, Martin Luther King presented his I Have a Dream speech, stating, "We hold these truths to be self-evident that all men are created equal." He fought tooth and nail for this new way of living. Hi, my name is Georgie Wardlaw, and I chose to write about Martin Luther King Jr. because of his lasting impact that he held on our nation. He established changes throughout our communities, and I believe that he has changed the United States for all races and ethnicities for the better. Today I will be discussing a few of his achievements and how those achievements brought people together. Let's start by discussing his I Have a Dream speech. Martin Luther King was one of the most influential of his time. According to the U.S. Embassy, written by U.S. Mission Korea, more than 250,000 people, a fifth of them white, gathered near the Lincoln Memorial in Washington to rally for jobs and freedom. The primary reason for the I Have a Dream speech was not just for one skin color, but all races. He was urging the U.S. to give up its old ideas of thinking and pursue a new way of action and live up to the government's principles of justice and equality for all. Martin Luther King's speech, which was recorded by the U.S. Embassy, written by he himself, and presented August 28, 1963, states, "I have a dream that one day this nation will rise up and live out the true meaning of its creed. We hold these truths to be self-evident that all men are created equal." He is calling to stand the truthfulness of our nation's promises. The oppression was more than real, and they had to go back to this way of living, but not without changes in their mindset. Just to know that their children might have something that they did not have brought them together more than ever. Now that we know a little bit about his I Have a Dream speech, what he is most famous for, we can learn a little bit about his nonviolent movements and their effects. According to Stanford University, King eventually decided to not use armed bodyguards, despite threats on his life, and reacted to violent experiences such as the bombing of his home with compassion. He believed that showing love and compassion would bring about more change than anger. He did not want to retaliate against those who hurt him, but instead kill them with kindness. Martin Luther King was committed to using nonviolence as a tactic to bring about change, and this worked well for him and all of those fighting alongside his side. He presented speeches with strength of love, "Where do you go from here?" "Proud to be maladjusted," and "Three evils of society." He also presented "I Have a Dream" and his last speech the day before he was assassinated, "I've been to the mountaintop." King participated in the Montgomery bus boycott, the March on Washington, Freedom Riders, and multiple sit-ins in segregated restaurants. Now that we understand his nonviolent movements and the impact of his I Have a Dream speech, we can move on to how these influential choices in his life truly brought people together. According to the website Best Colleges, written by Venetia McGee, last updated December 8, 2023, Martin Luther King Jr. is a historical icon with deep roots in social justice and civil rights. His life and his words have powered generations of Americans to fight for equality. He is most remembered for his persistent leadership. He was a role model, but he was the opposite of many who were trying to enact change, and that is with his nonviolent movements and ability to bring people together. Just by using his words, he could create a softening in the people who were listening and convince them to use nonviolent movements as well. Venetia McGee also stated in that same article that nonviolence teaches people to condemn a person's negative actions rather than their humanity. King focused on this element as he faced such violence throughout his life. King believed that riots and arson and other ways of violent communication wouldn't get us anywhere, but instead set us back generations. These actions would be proving people right, and he helped people understand this. He changed the way that many people chose to act with change, and brought more love into the world than most could possibly do in the time that he had. Today I've discussed Martin Luther King Jr.'s I Have a Dream speech and the nonviolent movements he was a part of. Both of these things came to bring about the change that we have today. He brought about equality like he had always dreamed in a way that most people could not understand. Through all of his trials and tribulations, he showed the people who hated him love instead of retaliation. This is why we are where we are today. And justice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. These words that Martin Luther King lived by are words that got us to where we are today. Without Martin Luther King Jr., we may not have the same kind of equality that we have today, and there is always room for improvement. Oh.